So let's continue with the notes for this week. We talked about factors and prime factoring last class. Let's look at using prime factoring now when we talk about the greatest common factor. Now remember that factors divide evenly into a number. The greatest common factor is the largest factor that two or more numbers have in common. So let's look at listing the factors of 18 and 24 and then finding the greatest common factor. If we list the factors in pairs again, we probably won't leave any out. Remember, I only have to think about 4 and 5. They're not factors of 18. Factors of 24, thinking about 1, thinking about 2, 3, 4. All I have left to think about is 5, and 5 is not a factor of 24. Now you'll see that there are plenty of common factors. 1 is common, 2 is common, 3 is common, 4 is not common, 6 is common, 8 is not common, 9 is not common, 12 is not, 18 is not, and 24 is not. So when we look at this list, we can see that the greatest factor that they have in common is 6. I want you to pause the video, list the factors of 36 and 54, and find their greatest common factor. Oops. Remember, did you remember 54, 5 plus 4 is 9. That means it's divisible by 3. Again, we see that there are plenty of common factors. And we should have found that 18 is the greatest common factor. But it's a lot of work to list all of the factors of a number. It's easy to leave out a factor. And sometimes the numbers are so large, we don't want to actually list all of the factors. And so we can use prime factorization. Now, I do want to point out that there are video links on the class Moodle page for some of these lessons that you might want to watch if you want to see someone else teaching the lesson or have another review of things. So how do we use the prime factorization? Well, let's think about the prime factorization of 18. We said that 18 was 2 times 9. But 9 isn't prime, so it's 2 times 3 squared. 24, it was 8 times 3. 8 can be prime factored 2 cubed. So we're looking for the greatest common factor. That means we want a number that goes into both 18 and 24. Well, I can see that 18 has a 2 in it, and 24 also has a 2 in it. Now, 18 has 1 2, 24 has 3 2s. They both have 1 2, so I'm going to use 1 2. I can also see that both numbers have a factor of 3. 18 has 2 3s, 24 has 1 3. We're going to use 1 3 because they both have 1 3. The greatest common factor is 6. Now we already found that over here when we were listing all of the factors. So let's look at 36 and 54 using their prime factorization. 36, 4 times 9, so that's 2 squared times 3 squared. 54 is 2 times 27, so 2 times 3 cubed. What do they both have in common? They both have 1 2. They both have 2 3s. So 9 times 2 is 18. That's the greatest common factor we found over here. So what's the rule? We want to use the prime factors that they have in common to their lowest exponent. I want you to pause your video now and find the greatest common factor of 36 and 126. All right, they both have one factor of 2. They both have 2 factors of 3. They do not both have 7. The greatest common factor is 18 again. Pause your video again and find the greatest common factor of 48 and 80 using prime factorization. We see here that they both have 4 factors of 2. The greatest common factor is 16. Now, I know some of you are thinking that you would rather list the factors, but it's important for you to know that on your final exam, you will be asked to use the prime factorization to find the greatest common factor. So make sure you practice prime factoring and using those factors to find a greatest common factor. Now, here's a good question. Why don't we ask about the lowest common factor? Why are we always asking about the greatest common factor? The lowest common factor is always 1. It's not useful to talk about the lowest common factor if it's always the same number. Now, prime factoring is also helpful when we look at simplifying fractions. I know some of you have another method for simplifying fractions, and I'm happy about that, but I do want you to practice prime factoring. So let's do this. I know that 48 is 4 factors of 2 times 3. 80 is 4 factors of 2 times 5. Now notice that there is no adding and no subtracting in the numerator and the denominator. That's important. Because there's no adding and subtracting, we can go ahead and simplify. The 2's divide out. 2 divided by 2 always equals 1. and we're left with a simplified fraction of 3/5. Now, let's simplify 60/126. 60 is 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. 126, we already prime factored that there. We can simplify this. 2 divided by 2, 3 divided by 3. This simplifies to 10/21. Once we've divided out all of the common factors, we say that the fraction is in lowest terms. Pause your video and prime factor and simplify 36/54. And now pause your video and prime factor 216/288. Now you might have noticed that these are numbers that we prime factored earlier, so you can be sure that you were right after you're finished. Paying close attention, we can see that this simplifies to 3/4. Again, I'm going to stop here for now. Take some time to practice these concepts. Go back and listen again if you need to.